So after playing through A Nightmare at Green Lake in version 1.2 of Reverse 1999, I was once again blown away at just how good the presentation was. And with the typical Reverse 1999 fashion, the writers again went out of their way to incorporate thematic references from real life to inspire their story, which I really appreciate. We have Michael, or Michael Myers from the movie Halloween in 1978, Freddy, or Freddy Krueger from The Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984, and Jason, obviously a reference to Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th in 1980. Then on top of this, the developers would go as far as to showcase additional horror movie references even within the new outfits released in version 1.2. Eagle, Shining in 1980, So to be Suspiria in 1977, X, another inspiration for Halloween, and Cornbloom from Deep Red in 1975. But even looking beyond these cool inspirations, the best part about this event is that the entire plot itself progresses like a horror movie in and of itself, playing me like a fiddle with all the foreshadowing hits and plot twists. And additionally, if we start to dig into the concepts of each main characters of the story, we can start to see some amazing hidden messages that encompasses not only the event, but the whole story of Reverse 1999. So let's start with Blonney. Initially, she comes off as a very uptight and irritating character, at times getting really upset because things just didn't go her way. But we eventually learned that this was mainly because she had to put up walls around her to protect herself, because as an arcanist, she couldn't fit into the human society, and eventually she would disown her identity as an arcanist and tries to fit in with the social norms. To put it simply, she was basically going through an identity crisis. The reason why her story is so fascinating is because throughout the entire story of Reverse 1999, we've seen multiple instances of arcanists facing criticisms from humans, and Blonney in this event really reflects that idea yet again. But during this event, a new character shows up to help Blonney with their personal issues, Tooth Fairy. The best thing about Tooth Fairy is that she's very calm and objective. But if you did play through the backstory of Tooth Fairy in the event, it becomes very clear that she's also faced these arcanists versus humans problems in her life as well. And seeing Blonney act this way about disowning herself as an arcanist and trying to fit into human society, it really doesn't sit well with Tooth Fairy. And so throughout the entire event story, Tooth Fairy helps Blonney navigate this situation and showcases that she shouldn't disown herself of who she is, but rather to embrace it to move forward in life. And eventually, Blonney was finally able to accept who she is. But it wasn't just Tooth Fairy that helped Blonney figure all this out, because there's of course Anne. From the beginning of the event, it's made very clear that Anne has always been infatuated with Blonney, and she is constantly seen reinforcing the idea to Blonney that she is perfect the way she is. Now of course we learn that Anne is super obsessed with Blonney because of their secret past, but through these interactions and conversations, Blonney was able to open up and become more vulnerable, which also helped her to accept who she really was, which I thought was really cool. But while we are on the topic of Anne, we can't ignore the fact that she seems to have her own share of problems. I'm sure everybody who played the event knows by now that Anne has been Jessica the entire time. And because she's lived her entire life at Green Lake and being secluded from human society, she of course doesn't know a lot about normal human interactions. All she wanted to do was try to make friends. But because she only knew how to tell horror stories, which she learned from Blonney when they were younger, it causes some problems. In a simple explanation, the only thing that Jessica finds enjoyment in, or the only thing that she's ever known, were scary stories. And because she loved it so much, whenever people would visit the Green Lake, sharing these horror stories for entertainment was the only way that she thought she knew of how to make friends. But of course, everybody ran away because they started to freak out. Jessica just wasn't able to make friends from the outside world. Now the feeling that I got when I was playing through the story was that Jessica wasn't only obsessed or overprotective of Blonney, but she was so fixated on whether people enjoyed her stories. I honestly was a bit creeped out because she felt a little bit crazy, but honestly, can we really blame her? because she hasn't learned anything else in her life besides telling horror stories equals making friends. But thankfully at the end of the event, Jessica accepts Verton's invitation to join her to live a more diversified and meaningful life, where others would not judge her because of where she was from or the way she looked, which concludes the event in a very hopeful ending. Now some of us might argue whether this ending was a proper ending for a horror movie, and that's where our final main character enters the stage. Horropedia, the embodiment of external observer. What's interesting about Horropedia is that whether you like him or dislike him of his random and at times insensitive odd comments, he does play a pretty big role in the story, because he's the one that constantly breaks the fourth wall to reference the progression of this horror story for the observers, basically the players. To put it simply, Horropedia helps us feel more included and immersed in this movie, always giving hints as to what might happen next in the story and guide not only the main characters in the game, but the audience as well. I personally really liked what he added to the entire presentation of the event, and it felt pretty fresh. But of course, the funniest part was when he jokingly added at the end of the story that Jessica is the worst antagonist ever and the entire horror movie was screwed, fearing for the comments of the critics, the players. But I found this even more hilarious because since he broke the fourth wall and directly talks about this in the story, I actually felt like I was included in the story again, and weirdly, just because he said it, I ended up liking the ending even more. Now, whether that was an attempt at a reverse psychology or not, I have no idea. But after finishing the event and going back to do some more in-depth research, I learned several hints and foreshadowings that I found really cool. Maybe I was being dumb, but I initially thought that the grain effect at the beginning of the story was a flashback and a retelling of the story relating to Xeno's youth force. But obviously we learned that it's an actual film grain effect caused by the production of Blonney's movie shoot. I don't know, I just thought it was really funny to me, and it really did catch me off guard when Blonney's group and Verton's group met within the forest. Another interesting thing was the moss. When Verton brings back the moss after saving Anne from the cave, she has a discussion about it with Tooth Fairy. Apparently it's a potion that can cause humans to become impulsive, mad, and confused. And this effect spread throughout the entire forest because of the rain. In hindsight, it was really cool because not only does it explain the boys going crazy inside the cabin, but also the old madman that Tooth Fairy ran into at the very beginning of the event, essentially being a hint that was placed at the very beginning of the story. Now, when it comes to the rain, I also realized something very cool. It was explained during the event that the rain seems to act as some kind of a regenerative function for the critters at the Green Lake, which was later clarified at the end of the event that these critters have evolved to have some special abilities. But what I found really cool was that the critters that we fight in the story throughout the gameplay all had the ability to essentially resurrect themselves. I thought that was a cool addition to the whole event, regardless of how annoying fighting these critters actually were. And lastly, there was one more thing that I thought was really interesting. Remember the note collection of the villains that we collected throughout the event? The ending of each villain says the same exact thing. That's where the giant rock lives, a foul-smelling pool of water, an emerald on a silver ring. It only occurred to me after I finished the story that the giant rock that it was referring to was actually the lighthouse, and the foul-smelling pool was obviously the Green Lake. I don't know, maybe I was too dumb, but once I realized it, I thought that was like really cool and it kind of blew my mind. But to be fair, I'm still not sure what an emerald on a silver ring could be. If you have any idea what this is referring to, please let me know because I'm very interested. And if you want to add to anything that was discussed in this video, let me know in the comments as well. So overall, I absolutely love this event because it really did feel like a movie inside of a movie. And all the characters having deeper meanings within the entire plot was also really awesome to see. I'm really glad that I actually played this event and just wanted to give a shout out to the team of Reverse 1999 for coming up with yet another awesome event. And I also want to give a special thank you for sponsoring this video. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the event and the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. And again, if you haven't played the game yet, I really suggest you give it a try. The story is absolutely fascinating, and make sure to follow Reverse 1999 social pages for updates and events and anything coming in the future. I'll link everything in the description down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.